Okay, so by now you know that there's absolutely nothing to Russiagate. Wah wah. It's over. And what we knew pretty much from the beginning, many of us knew that this was just nothing, that this was a witch hunt, essentially, in order to try to take Trump out. So I know that you already know all of the details, that basically there are no details. So I want to move on to talking about the real consequences of Russiagate. Where does this leave us now? What have been the real ramifications of this? Because I actually think Russiagate was a lot more damaging to our nation than many are even thinking about. I want to kind of bring your attention to something that is a genuine, real consequence of this entire fiasco. So, first of all, there are two real big consequences. One of them being the new Cold War, which people have been talking about, especially, Tulsi Gabbard has mentioned this several times, where, it's this escalation of tension between the two nations. And that is going to be especially true if a Democratic president sits in office. So with Trump right now, he's just doing whatever he wants to do. But because the tensions are so high and people are so afraid of Russia and they're thinking, oh my gosh, Russia is infiltrating our government, and they were able to put in a Manchurian candidate into the Oval Office, because that is more of a something that people are feeling on the Democratic side. When a Democrat sits in that office, then they're going to have a lot of pressure to do anything that is against Russia. And that has kind of escalated this new Cold War. So it's this arms race, this you guys are the big bad enemy. And for Trump, it's also kind of escalated it, not as much as it would if a Democrat were sitting in office. For Trump, it's escalated it because he's trying to prove that he's not a Russian bot, that he's not a Russian plant, Manchurian candidate. But it would especially be so when a Democrat is sitting in office, depending on the Democratic candidate. So there are a few that we know that if they were in office, they would not escalate this new Cold War. But there are many that absolutely would, that they would go along with the narrative, that they would pander to the base. And the Democratic base is thinking that Russia had a lot to do with all of this. So that would be a huge escalation. But something else that is a really big consequence of Russiagate is, now, when something is in our best interest as a nation, and it just so happens to also be something that Russia wants, what do you think the narrative is going to be? How do you think Americans are going to react? So, for example, anti-interventionism, to have this idea, this viewpoint that we do not want to be marching in to these regime change wars, that we no longer want to fight proxy battles with Russia in Venezuela, Syria, Iran, numerous other locations. What is going to be the spin around that idea? So we've already seen this happen once, right? With NBC, they put out that article against Tulsi Gabbard saying that Russians are supporting her. And the fact of the matter is that Russia, what they're supporting is their own agenda. They don't care about America or American candidates. They really don't. What Russia cares about is Russia, just like the United States should care about the United States, just like every nation should care about its own and its own people. So Russia's caring about Russia. And what Russia wants is for the United States to stay on our side of the globe, to stop meddling, to stop interfering, to stop playing the world like a chess game and putting soldiers here and bases there and starting fights here and intervening there. Russia would like us to stop all of that. And many of us, Americans, would also like us to stop all of that. But we want us to stop all of that not because we're in line with Russia. But that's going to be the narrative. That's going to be the narrative from here on out. It is going to be anytime anybody says something that, oh my gosh, Russia wants that too. Oh, they must be supported and propped up by Russia. They must be the next Manchurian candidate. That's what's going to happen from here on out. So we can pretty much forget. And we're already seeing this with how Tulsi's been treated, like I said, with NBC and pretty much any anti-interventionist candidate or anybody who touts an anti-interventionist message is going to be met with resistance, even when it's in the best interest of the United States. We will cut off our nose to spite our own face with this narrative now of Russia, Russia, Russia. This has harmed us so greatly. This was more than just a distraction from what the Democratic Party did. This was a way of, getting back for Hillary losing. This is more than all of that. This goes deeper than all of that. The consequences are worse. And I know that many of us are celebrating in a way, saying, we told you so, that this was going to be absolutely nothing. And look, you guys went on and on and on and on and on about this for years, and terrible journalism, and, absolutely thinking that it's going to be something and it isn't. And I don't feel sorry for Trump for it by any means. The guy, he was a big old birther, and he deserves to have all kinds of, he deserves to sweat, okay? But the problem was, this is what the Democrats decided to make him sweat on, rather than his taxes, rather than the vast amount of other things I'm sure he's guilty of that have to do with his business dealings and, tax evasion and, fraud, or whatever those things might be. Rather than investigating him for things that he probably did commit, instead the Democrats decided to go after Russia. They decided to antagonize a world power and put us in a position to where now it is absolutely against us. This is going to hurt us way more than it's going to hurt Trump or Russia. This is going to hurt us, the American people. This is going to hurt the men and women that we put in harm's way because we're marching them off to proxy wars. And when those of us scream and say, hey, this is not good, this is not what we want, they will absolutely accuse any and all of us of being Russian plants, of being propped up by Russians. And they'll use that as ammunition against us. And the worst part about it is many in the base will believe it. So that is the real consequence of Russiagate. It goes way deeper than just, look at how ridiculous it wasted money, resources, time, ended up with nothing. This led us into a new Cold War, especially when a Democrat's in office. And it made it to where anytime we have anything that we want to do that is in our own best interest, all Russia even has to do now is act like it's something they want. And they know that just by coming out and saying, we really would like to see this happen, alluding to it, dropping hints to that, even printing it in RT, they know that the mainstream Democratic, or I shouldn't even say mainstream, but the establishment media and the establishment base are going to eat that up, and they're going to say, see that? We shouldn't do it. We shouldn't do it. That is the real consequence of Russiagate.